Retro Now.
Hi, this is Emily Swallow, the Armorer in The Mandalorian. You're listening to Dennis and Jay on Podcast Stardust. This is the way.
Happy Monday, and welcome to Podcast Stardust. This is the fully armed and operational podcast dedicated to Star Wars news, reviews, and discussion. I'm Dennis Keithley.
And I'm Jay Krebs.
And we're going to explore the deleted scenes of the Phantom Menace, and we're going to do a little bit of news before that. But before we get to all those things, Jay, you want to go ahead and remind everybody what our social media contacts are?
Absolutely. We are very easily found on Facebook and Instagram at Podcast Stardust.
All right. The dish is aligned, the signal's boosted to maximum output, the shield is down. We are now broadcasting to the galaxy. So, like I said, we're going to spend the bulk of our episode talking about the deleted scenes from the Phantom Menace, as we are still celebrating that movie for its 25th anniversary. Got a little bit of trivia left after this episode, but we're getting close to the end, but not quite there. But before we do that, I wanted to cover a little bit of news. There's not enough of it to do it by itself, which is why we combined it with the deleted scenes. But so let's kind of jump into it. Up first, Jay, we have the news from Variety that Jeremy Allen White is joining the cast of The Mandalorian and Grogu. And I know who he is, but I've never seen his work as far as I'm concerned. As far as I know, he has the lead role in The Bear, which is about a guy who comes home to take over the family restaurant and runs the place. Have you seen that show?
I have not, no.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say there was such a big deal that was being made about Jeremy Allen White, and not taking away anything from the gentleman, but I was thinking to myself, okay, am I missing something? Like...
Yeah. Well, he's a 2-time Emmy winner for that role. So it's a big get,
Mm-hmm.
which makes it a little bizarre that he is coming to The Mandalorian and Grogu in a voice acting role playing Rhoda the Hutt, aka Stinky.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think
And that
about
was
this?
my next question is that really much of a speaking role? Unless Rhoda is going to be, a little bit more, speaking a little bit more Huttese, but he was a little bit more grunty and didn't
It's
really say
25
a whole
years
lot.
later. So,
True.
I mean,
good point.
It's at least 25 years later. So I'm assuming Rhoda's grown up at this point, which would be a much more of a speaking role. But I'm assuming he's going to be speaking
That's a good
Huttese.
point. Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But still,
Stinky.
I didn't think we'd ever see Stinky again after
I
the Clone
know,
Wars
right?
movie. And this almost begs for Ahsoka to show up and have a
Oh, for
cameo now
sure.
in this movie.
For sure.
Yeah. So I don't know.
Reunited.
Very curious. But I mean, with Dave Filoni involved, I guess this is not too much of a surprise because he does seem to bring in characters from all over the place. And sometimes it's the character you expect the least.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
in Filoni we trust, that's for sure.
Yeah, I'm fine with it. I'm just very everything that could happen. That one's just really, really surprises me.
Yeah,
So,
didn't have that one on our Star Wars bingo card, did we?
definitely not. So we've been enjoying Skeleton Crew, and we got a little, I wouldn't necessarily call it news, but Collider did an interview with John Watts and Chris Ford and asked about a potential second season of Skeleton Crew. And they said they are definitely ready to come back for a second season if they're given a chance. They already know what they want to do. The only hint is that the show would likely jump ahead 3 or 4 years because it takes a lot of time to produce a Star Wars show, and the kids would definitely grow up a little bit, and it simply wouldn't be believable to have it like the next day, is what they're saying there. So, hey, I'm there. If you want to do a second season based on what I've seen, just the first 3 of 8 on this season, sign me up.
Right. And I think that at least for the most part, those that have seen Skeleton Crew so far are definitely in agreement. I mean, this is something that hit the ground running for most fans, and I haven't heard anything negative at all so far about Skeleton Crew. And I'm very happy about that, because we've oftentimes said that nobody hates Star Wars more than Star Wars fans. And, I haven't heard anything but good things, so that's so encouraging. So, 2nd season, bring it on.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking it up as we speak. I know it is certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes for what
Mhm.
that's worth. Let's see if we can get the score here real quick. Yeah, I mean, 95%. It's not actually certified fresh yet because I guess I don't have enough reviews, but it's 95% positive reviews. And the fan rating is 81%, which is pretty good for Star Wars, as you're saying,
Yes, it
uh,
is.
these days.
We'll take
Um,
it.
I mean, I've basically found the majority of fans are enthusiastic and positive about it. There's, or if they're not, they're just kind of meh about it. I have not seen a lot of vitriol towards this show, which is refreshing.
It
So
is.
yeah, but hey, if you don't like it, it's not your thing. That's fine too. It doesn't have to be
Sure.
for everybody.
There's plenty of
Okay,
other stuff.
last little bit of news before we get into the deleted scenes. We have an update on the guest list for Star Wars Celebration Japan, and that is really to no surprise that Diego Luna is going to be there. Season 2 of Andor starts literally days after Celebration Japan. I think it's like the 25th, and Celebration's the 18th to the 20th of April. So we kind of been suspecting this as something that was going to happen because we knew Andor was coming next year, and that we don't have a movie that's likely to be done enough for them to do a panel about it at that point, especially since Mandalorian and Grogu's not coming until May of 2026. Not, like I said, not surprised by this one. You have any thoughts about that?
Oh, I'm just happy that,
Yeah.
they're getting so many of the stars and especially from Andor. And like you said, it's almost concurrent with the release of the series. So you know that they're gonna have some, preview kind of exclusive where people get to be in the room and see the first couple of episodes. You know that's gonna happen, right?
Yeah, and if not that, they'll get an extended scene that the rest of us won't get to see, and
Right.
we'll have to wait 5 days, which fine, I can
Mhm.
do that.
Yeah.
But just to refresh everyone's memory, the other guests that have been announced so far are Mads Mikkelsen and Alan Tudyk. So some other Rogue One stars, and Alan Tudyk is also in season 2 of Andor. So I'm assuming there'll be a panel about that. Manny Jacinto from The Acolyte, Daniel Logan, also known as Young Boba Fett, Anthony Daniels, who is a staple for Celebration. It's not Celebration without him. You have to have
Right.
C3PO. The other Fett, Tamara Morrison, Doug Chain, and Ashley Eckstein will all be there as well. So get ready for Celebration and some great celebrity action there. Okay.
Yeah. And I'm sure that list will only grow.
Yep. Yep. So, okay. Well, let's turn to the deleted scenes from the Phantom Menace here. This is something you and I have been talking about doing for several weeks now. We finally got a chance to do it. I pulled them off of Disney Plus. If you go to the Phantom Menace and look at the extras, you can find all of them. They have 10 deleted scenes. There's a couple of these I wouldn't actually call deleted. I'd call extended scenes, and we'll kind of
Mhm.
notate that. So basically, the framework where I want to do this, Jay, is we'll talk about each one of the scenes, and then we'll say whether or not we liked it, if it actually did anything to enhance the movie or was necessary, and if this is something that we wish they would have left in the movie
Mhm.
going forward. So, with that having been said, our first one is called Anakin's Return. It's a whopping 17 seconds. We get to see the pilots after the Battle of Naboo. They return from destroying the Trade Federation battleship. And then we've got Rick O'Lee saying everyone's accounted for, but they want to know who flew the N1 that destroyed the Trade Federation battleship. So that's noteworthy because Rick O'Lee is not just describing the action that's happening around him. Uh, but then we get some temporary graphics of Anakin landing his ship. Everyone approaches it, and then the canopy pulls back, and Anakin pops it out. It says, "I'm not going to get in trouble, am I?" So, what do you think about this quick little scene?
Well, the main thing that hit me about it is just that it kind of echoes when Luke lands, back on the base with his X-wing
Yeah,
after blown up the Death Star, which is kind
Mhm.
of a fun, you know how I like my Star Wars to rhyme, so it was kind of a fun little rhyming moment. But so I liked it well enough for that. But was it absolutely necessary? I don't think so. But like I said, that was the main thing that I pulled out of there was that little rhyming.
Yeah, I'm with you. That's the only reason I would say that it should have been in the movie, is simply because you
Hmm.
had that nice reflection of the end of A New Hope. However, it wasn't the celebratory atmosphere that we got at the end of A New Hope, and also
Right.
after this, Anakin's gonna have to confront the death of Qui-Gon.
Yes.
So, from that perspective, I'm thinking it was better left out.
Hmm. Hmm.
And,
I would agree.
yeah, if there had been a happier way to insert it, then sure, go for it. But 17 seconds in a movie that's already over 2 hours and 10 minutes, I can see why they would have gone ahead and cut this.
Sure.
All right. The next scene is called Anakin's Scruffle with Greedo. And this is a purely deleted scene. It's about 56 seconds long. When you watch this, it has a notation at the beginning that it's deleted scene 6. And I think that's because of its placement on the original DVD for this movie that came out. Not positive about that.
Likely.
Yeah, but anyways, it's the second deleted scene that's on Disney Plus. But we get a bunch of droids hauling some parts in the sky, and then it pans down to Anakin straddling a Rhodian child and beating him up while a crowd of kids are screaming in the background. Qui-Gon shows up, the other kids run off, and Qui-Gon then asks, "What's this all about?" And Anakin, referring to the Rhodian that he's been pounding, says, he says, "I cheated." Qui-Gon then asks Anakin if he did, to which Anakin responds, "No." And then he asks the Rhodian if he still thinks that Anakin cheated, and he says yes. Qui-Gon turns to Anakin and says, well, he's going to have to tolerate the Rhodian's opinion. Fighting will not change it. And so Qui-Gon and Anakin go to leave. And Wald turns to Rhodian and says, you better watch it, Greedo, or you're going to come to a bad end. So,
Talk about foreshadowing.
yeah. So, again, it's a neat little Jedi lesson that Qui-Gon gives Anakin, and then it gives us another tie to the New Hope if they had left that in. But did you like it? What did you think about this scene here?
Well, wasn't this remind me in the novelization that
Yes.
Anakin was fighting with Greedo? That's what I thought.
Yeah.
In some ways, again, it just shows what kind of adversity Anakin had to deal with all the time, whether he liked it or not. And kids will be kids, boys will be boys. I mean, you get this on the playground all the time, kids tormenting other kids, but so, like you said, this was a good little Jedi lesson from Qui-Gon, but, I mean, other than that, it's not really necessary. I mean, as far as it almost shows Anakin in a worse light, and I think that the idea that they were trying to paint a little bit more here is just the fact that Anakin was so innocent in so many ways, and even though this does set up his ability, or I should say disability, to be able to handle his anger later on, it's a little too soon for that.
That's well said. I hadn't thought to put it that way, but I think you're right. Yes, when we get to Attack of the Clones, we get a number of instances where we preview Anakin's temper and this potential for him to, give into the fear, give into the hate that Yoda's so worried about. I guess one might argue that this would have been something that makes what Yoda and Mace and all the other Jedi on the council think of Anakin makes sense about, I sense much fear in you, fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, that type of a thing. But to your point, that's the only instance. This would have been the only instance of it in the entire movie. I mean, the closest we get to otherwise is Anakin saying to Padme, "My name is Anakin, and I'm a person, or I'm a person.
Right,
My name is Anakin." Right? But even then, it was just him being defensive. It wasn't him like throwing a temper tantrum or
right.
anything there. Um, and then, sure, again, you get the A New Hope reference with Greedo, but I don't know. That part feels a little bit forced
Mhm.
to me.
I
I
agree.
mean, it's and so um, I don't know that the movie needed this scene. It certainly maybe makes the poster that we're also filming with Anakin, looking kind of down at the ground in his shadow as Darth Vader make more sense. That was going around at the time, but I don't consider this to have been something vital to the movie, and it was left out just as well. You're right. It didn't paint Anakin in any great light, but I don't think it really got necessarily, watch out for this kid. He just beat up a Rodian that was bullying him. So,
Right, right.
yeah,
Well, and I mean, and we all knew going into this that that this kid was going to be Darth Vader. You know what I mean?
yeah,
That was just kind of known, so you don't have to hammer the point home with a scene like that.
right. Okay, so let's turn to the third one, which is Bail Organa of Alderaan. And hold on to your seats for this one. It's 19 seconds. It takes place in the Senate. And from context, you can tell it's right after Amidala has made her vote or made her motion for a vote of no confidence in Chancellor Valorum. This man stands up and in the Senate and says, Alderaan seconds the vote of no confidence in Chancellor Valorum. It's not Jimmy Smits.
Right.
It is an actor by the name of Adrian Dunbar, who's best known for The Crying Game and My Left Foot. It's well, let me ask, what do you think? Is this something they should have kept, or what, or you have a thought on it?
I'm glad they didn't because, Jimmy Smits is Bail Organa, you know what I
Right.
mean? So, I mean, for it to go from this actor to Jimmy later on would be I mean, we all like our consistency with Star Wars, number 1, but the only thing I think that it probably would have, at this point, tried to hammer home is just the existence of Alderaan in the Senate,
Hmm.
and I don't necessarily think that that was, absolutely needed. So I'm kinda glad that they didn't put it in because it's not Jimmy, but
Yeah,
I'm
I
a
mean,
little
nothing
biased.
against yeah, nothing against Adrian Dunbar. I
Right,
don't
yeah,
really know him
totally.
or his work here, and I'm assuming if they had used this scene, they would have gone ahead and tried to recast him for later movies, and then Alderanians, as we know them, would look different because they're all fairly dark complected compared
Sure.
to him and Leia. So that's fine, but Jimmy Smits is just cool. So I'm glad he got that role when it
Oh,
came
heck
down to
yeah.
it, when it counted here. And
Mhm.
so, I mean, again, you said it. This is really just, again, another way to throw in a reference to things we already know. And maybe it was to do Bale, that was the thought. So, because he was going to show up in later movies, but when they cut him here, then they had an opportunity to use a more famous actor and they took it. So,
Mhm.
okay.
There you go.
All right. Then we've got our our fourth deleted scene is Battle on the Boarding Ramp. It's also 19 seconds. Now, this is one of those that is actually more of an extension rather than a deleted scene. And this is Darth Maul fighting Qui-Gon Jinn. And then as the Queen's cruiser, flies low so that Qui-Gon can jump up on the ramp, Darth Maul jumps up after him. They battle briefly, and then Qui-Gon basically kicks him off, and then we see Maul kind of doing that standing up and turning off his lightsaber, which we get in the movie. It's just this makes that move make a little bit more sense.
Yes.
Um, and so, with that in mind, this is actually something I think I would have liked to have seen them kept on there,
Mhm.
because it's the scene is 19 seconds, but it's really only like 4 or 5 of additional material.
Yeah, and you took the words right out of my mouth. Like, it just makes more sense, that very last image that you get of Darth Maul shutting off his lightsaber at that point, and, even if it's only an extra 4 or 5 seconds, I always like some more Maul, for sure. But no, you're right, it just seems more cohesive as a scene to leave it in.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the scene was fine without it, and if I had
Sure.
never seen this, then I would have been good. I'm good with the way it is now. But yeah, this actually enhances it. So this is something that I think could have been cool to leave in there. All right, on to the fifth scene. This is the biggest of all of them at 7 minutes. It's the complete pod race grid sequence, and so again, this is an extended scene. Um, it, it's got a notation as the first deleted scene, but it's not, because again, that's from that DVD. But we've seen most of this footage in the movie, but we get more shots of the pod racers getting pulled out onto the track. More racers are getting introduced. Jar Jar steals the thunder of one of them. He thinks that they're cheering for
Mhm.
him. We get Rats Terrell's introduction and a shot of his family,
Yes.
especially noting that, Mama Terrell had just had a baby
Yeah.
on there.
Just got out of the hospital.
Yeah, which is definitely going to make his demise later, a little bit more tragic.
Mhm.
We get a Biff band in the stands that reacts to the introduction of one of the pod racers. The fart by the Opie gets exaggerated. I'm glad that's gone.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was completely unnecessary. And then we get more shots of the pod racers powering up. We get a close up of the poor creature that Jabba bites its head off of from a Jabba
Yeah.
POV before he bites off the head and spits it into the gong to start the race. And so, this is 7 minutes. I want to say, I don't know, I'm not even sure if half of it is actually new footage, but it does significantly extend that scene. I mean, 7 minutes is not a short scene at all
No, uh-uh.
for this movie here. What did you think of this?
Well, selfishly, I love the pod racing scene and I just love everything about it. But the pod racing whole sequence of events was already a very long portion of the movie to begin with. And as much as I really did enjoy and smiled the entire time, just revisiting some of these characters and getting to see, like you said, like Rats Tyrell's family and the Biff. And I really did like the POV of the poor little frog creature. But again, was it necessary? Probably not. I mean, they made the right choice because again, the sequence itself of the pod race was already long enough and there was already people that have come back and said that they actually skip over the pod race, which I never do because I love it.
No, neither do I.
But
I love the
yeah,
Padres.
me
Yeah.
too. But I welcomed all of these fun little things, but I think it was the right decision to shorten it.
I'm very torn on this because in its own way, there was so much world building they did in this extended by showing the other racers, talking, mentioning the planets they come from, uh, getting us some other shots, the pods that we kind of only
Mhm.
see in the background otherwise, which was really
That I
cool.
loved. Mhm.
Yeah. And the whole thing with Rats Terrell, I'm torn on that too because we see them in Mos Espa running around some, and they're always kind of like in the background. We see the aftermath where the family is kind of like wandering away in grief afterwards, after the
Yeah.
race and stuff like this. So maybe this puts too much of a spotlight on them. I'm not sure what to think about that. It almost seems cruel to focus on them this much to get an unceremonious demise of Rats. The way he
Mhm.
goes out there. So I guess I'm going to compromise by saying I don't want the entire 7 minutes, all the extras that they threw in here, but maybe a few of them would have been cool. So I don't know. I think there's somewhere between what we got and what this scene is what I would have liked to have seen.
Mhm. And I
When it came
appreciate
down
yeah,
to it.
I agree. What you said about the world building, I do appreciate that sentiment for sure.
Yeah. Okay, that brings us to the sixth scene, which is the extended pod race lap 2. Again, this is an extended scene, not a deleted scene. It's 4 minutes long. It's called Deleted Scene 2, again, for the DVD. Lot of additions to that second lap of the pod race, including Sebulba flashing his vents as he knocks another racer out. We got references to that, but we would actually ever seen it.
Mhm.
A ship lowers into place on the course and discharges droids to pick up the wreckage. We've got Anakin trying to avoid the ship, but he ends up hitting one of the droids and destroying it. A different pod racer makes a pit stop. We get a few more close ups of some of the racers. We get Jawas attempting to salvage parts from the crashed pod racers as Tuskens take pot shots at them. And then Sebulba trying to flash his vents on Anakin as well. So, what do you think of this one?
Well, again, I kind of feel the same way that it was probably a smart move to take this out only because everything else was already so long. I mean, honestly, I would welcome just a little mini movie of just all of the pod race stuff. I mean, from what we're
Sure.
going to talk about next with the wager to, all of the extended scenes and like you said, all the world building that happened pre-race. And I mean, bring it all on. I'd love to even see what was going on in the back, like in the pits, almost like a FanDuel or DraftKings kind of thing, with all the wagering going on. I mean, bring it all on and make it a little featurette. But again, it was probably a smart move not to include this one.
Yeah, what we need is a Tales of the Boonta Eve Pod Race book
Yes.
or anthology series like Tales of the Empire, or
Yeah,
Tales of the Jedi or something on Disney Plus. And so that, that maybe that's the way to go about doing it and preserving some of the stuff.
that's a great
Um,
idea.
I like this, and I couldn't tell you exactly how much of the 4 minutes was new material, but I like seeing Sebulba flashing the vents.
Mhm.
That would have been cool to leave him there. And I did like seeing some of the close-ups on some of the racers. The reference to the Jawas as they're trying to salvage the parts, cool, but it does take you away from the race for like longer than it should. So I'm fine with them leaving that one out. The ship lowering into place and discharging the droids, probably something that would have been better just to see as they raced by them as opposed to focusing on them when they did
Mhm.
that. So it's something they could have left in, but maybe put it like in the background as the pod racers are going by, this one ship and the droids picking up those parts. Because it would have been cool to see, but again, it takes you away from the race for that to
Mhm.
happen. So I could see
Mhm.
why that was left out there. But some of the other stuff, like the additional pod racer making a pit stop,
Yeah, that was cool.
yeah, I mean that enhances the notion that this is a race, a big time race. So
Right.
yeah,
Right.
so again, this is one I think would like to see a little bit of it, but it makes sense why they did not when it
Mhm.
comes down to it.
Sure.
All right, extended scene 7, which is the pod race wager. It's about a minute and a half, and we get an extended version of the bet between Qui-Gon and Watto. We get a lot more negotiations over what the bet is going to be, and Qui-Gon really has to talk Watto into betting either Anakin or Shmi. And Watto haggles quite a bit with this and keeps insisting that Anakin is not for sale. So, what were your thoughts on that one?
Well, what I liked about this one is just the dynamic between Qui-Gon and Watto, and you just get a little bit more than that. And it kind of goes back to what we were talking about with, the whole ethics of what Qui-Gon was doing in the first place, with the whole wager and whatnot. But
Mhm.
again, I mean, is it necessary? Probably not.
Yeah, I think it's not. I mean, a lot of the stuff that gets haggled over gets summarized in just the simple exchange that Qui-Gon has with Watto, which is okay, I'll bet the pod racer say against the boy and his mother, and then Qui-Gon or then Watto's immediate response to that is like, no pod is worth two slaves. That's what that whole thing is about, and they boil it down for a minute and a half to seconds for that. So
Hmm.
you know, is this probably what a real life bet would have looked like? Yes,
Right.
but we're talking about a narrative that's on the screen, so you need to be concise, and so I think that was the better way to go for that one.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
okay, our eighth scene is 20 seconds long and is called "The Battle Is Over." We have a Naboo guard on the streets of Theed contacting Padme and Panaka in the throne room to tell them that the control ship was destroyed. He then pushes a droid over, which has got some blue screen behind it, and it falls much the same way the battle droid did when Jar Jar pushed it over. Then Padme turns to Gunray and says, "You're going to have to go explain this all to the Senate." What are your thoughts on that one?
Well, what I like about it is that once again, it reminds me of the end of the remastered Return of the Jedi, where they go from planet to planet to show the different points of view
Mhm,
of what happens, after the second Death Star is blown up. And so that's what about the only thing that this accomplishes in that regard is that just giving you that different point of view and then kind of a little bit more seamlessly going into the Padme talking to Gunray that he's gonna have to go to the Senate and explain this. But
mhm.
again, necessary? No.
Yeah, and frankly, everything that happens here ended up happening in other places in the movie. Like I just said, Jar Jar ends up pushing over the droids, thinking they all broken. The control ships were destroyed. They had that the Gungans had that conversation, and
Mhm.
then Padme still says that to Gunray. It's just at the end of the movie after the Jedi show up and Supreme Chancellor Palpatine shows up. So, so anyways, we get all those things. So they just decided to work those lines in elsewhere. So yeah, I
Mhm.
mean, just an alternate take.
Sure.
Okay. Deleted scene number 9, the waterfall sequence. This is about 2 minutes long. The bongo gets the feed. It starts to drift backwards over a waterfall, and Obi-Wan can't restore the power, so Qui-Gon essentially uses an ascension cable, and they use it to get to safety before the bongo goes over the falls. Jar Jar was reluctant at first, but he jumps out, swims his way over there, and then we get a shot of a fountain as they walk their way into Theed. So I, I, I don't even know why this was there. It doesn't really add anything to the movie yet whatsoever. I mean, it's just kind of a side trip that really just distracts from the overall story as far as I was concerned. But what do you think?
Yeah, honestly, it's funny. I really liked this one. And I guess part of it is because I was thinking to myself how much effort they had to put into Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan shimmying their way across that cable in the water. And I thought to myself, I understand that actors go through this all the time, but what a bummer that you put all that effort into this scene only to have it on the cutting room floor. But another thing I liked about it is just getting a little bit more of a different part of Naboo with Theed and just getting to see that aspect of the fountains and that side of the castle and just the architecture and that type of thing. So from an aesthetic point of view, that I thought was pretty cool. But like you said, was it really it definitely wasn't necessary, but I enjoyed it nonetheless.
Sure, yeah, it just doesn't do anything for the story itself. It doesn't
Sure.
contribute anything. So, okay, well then, our final deleted scene is called "Trash Talking Droids." It's weird they put this one last because it happens first. It's
Right?
27 seconds long. We get two previously unseen droids, and they are making that comments that the ambassadors must be important, that the viceroy sent one of those useless protocol gearheads to greet them. And then, no one makes a comment, a Republic cruiser, that is trouble, don't you think? And the other one's response is, I'm not made to think. And then they kind of wheel off the screen. So it's basically something that was supposed to happen in the foreground as the ambassadors are shown to their conference room. What do you think?
Well, it's obvious that this was very early on in the decision-making process that it wasn't gonna make it to screen because it was so rough.
Yeah.
It was barely rendered in terms of the animation, if you will, of uh, the effects. And so the only thing that I think it accomplishes is just that there's this droid hierarchy, kind of thing going on.
Yeah.
But absolutely not necessary.
Yeah. This seems like a fun setup for, from a certain point of view, the Phantom Menace,
Oh,
these two
yeah,
characters are
okay,
having
good
something.
point. Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, otherwise, why do we have to have their opinion on TC-14? It's they're just about to be revealed as Jedi in a second anyway. So yeah, it doesn't really do anything for the movie or the story going forward, and maybe distracts from the tone they were going for at the beginning of the movie because it's kind of
Agreed.
subdued there at the beginning, and it's very serious. And Captain, tell them we wish to last to once. All due respect, the ambassadors, blah blah. Of course, will be welcome to. And then we got their droids, I think, and they all freak out. The Nymodians do, and then this just kind of ruins that atmosphere, I think.
Mhm.
So
No, I
yeah.
totally agree with that, and like I said, it was obvious that it was made this decision pretty early on to cut it. But speaking of a certain point of view, do you think we'll have to wait another 15 years to get the prequel versions like we did for our original trilogy for the 40th anniversary of of those
I
books?
yeah, I don't know. I mean, I would have thought if there was ever time to do it, it would have been now, just because
Exactly.
you've already. I mean, yes, it's not the 40th anniversary like they did for the original trilogy, but are they going to think to do it at that point? I mean, I would think you could do a whole other batch of them at that point if you wanted to. You could do another batch
Mhm.
from a certain point of view, and at the 50th anniversary for all these books if you wanted to. So
Mhm.
yeah, I'm just assuming that they're not doing them, but as much as I'd
Yeah,
like to see them.
that's too
So
bad. Missed opportunity.
all right, I'm gonna put you on the spot here. If you had to pick one of these to put back into the movie, which one would you choose?
Oh, probably number 5. Even though although, ooh, okay, I'm gonna go 1-1A. I'm gonna say the complete pod race grid sequence, again, only because selfishly I really liked it. Wasn't necessary, but I really liked it. But definitely the battle on the boarding ramp between Maul and Qui-Gon, I think is one that definitely needed to be put back in. And then I'm gonna say 1A was number 5, the 7 minutes. What do you
Yeah,
think?
I agree. The battle on the boarding ramp is probably the one that makes the most sense to put back
Uh-huh.
in. But I'm torn. I think I wouldn't want the entire extended sequence from 5, or from the pod race grid sequence, or the extended lap 2 of the pod race, but some of that stuff I would want to see put back in to the
Yeah.
movie. Like I said, move the ship and its droids that are picking up the debris to the background. But I want to see the Sebulba Flash's vents, because that just makes him more dangerous on it. It would put you on
Mhm.
edge for the rest of lap 2 and lap 3. And I do want to see more shots of the pod racers and the grid and then the race and everything. It just makes it bigger. So yeah, that would be my vote. Just the extended stuff for the pod race. I know it's already long the way it is, but hey, that's the highlight of the movie for a lot of
It
people. So
is, yeah.
yeah.
It would be a lot of fun to do, almost a remastered special edition of the prequels, which I know is not on the table because there's so many other Star Wars projects going on right now, but that
Mhm.
would be cool to have something like that we got for the originals.
I have a feeling if George Lucas was still in charge, we would have got that.
Mhm.
I suspect something like that would have happened, but since it's Disney, I don't think they're as into that as much. So
I agree.
all right. Okay. Well, then
That was fun.
that was fun. Yeah. Jinx, you owe me a soda. But
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah, it was fun to do that. We'll have to make sure we do that next year if they're available for whatever movie we end up covering, which we'll be announcing at sometime in the near future.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you all for joining us for the news and this look at the deleted scenes from the Phantom Menace. We hope you had a good time. And if you did, then please consider subscribing to the podcast if you haven't done so already. You can do that on your podcatcher of choice. We're pretty much available on everything. And if we aren't, let us know, and we will try and get that set up. But once you subscribed, please rate, review the podcast, like whatever it is that your podcatcher allows for. That does help us get noticed and help the show grow. And if you want to find our entire catalog of shows, head over to retrozap.com. You can find all previous 820 of them. We've been around for a while, been doing this quite a bit.
Mhm.
And with that having been said, Jay, you want to go ahead and remind everybody what our social media contacts are and our other various homes on the internet?
Sure thing. We are on Facebook and Instagram conveniently at Podcast Stardust. And we also have a whole bunch of Pinterest boards over there. So if you're in need of some fun Star Wars ideas for just about everything, you can head over there. And we also have 2 different YouTube outlets. So we have the traditional YouTube as well as YouTube Music. So head over to both of those, like, subscribe, and share those out. And they do support reviews and interactions. So we'd love to see it. And we also have a Discord room on the RetroZap Discord server. So if you'd like to join us for some real time chatter, or let us know what your favorite scenes were deleted or extended, let us know, and what your thoughts are on whether or not you'd like to have any of them brought back into play. So the link to that is in our show notes, and then also in our show notes is the link to our TeePublic store, where you can find 7 different show logo designs available on all kinds of things, from t-shirts and sweatshirts and everything in between. So with the holidays upcoming, you can give yourself a gift or give one to someone else.
All right. You want to remind everybody what you got coming up with cosplay?
Sure. So right now on my Instagram, which is at j.snipscosplay, you can catch my recap of GalaxyCon Columbus, as well as just some other fun things that I've got going on over there. But you can always catch me as Ahsoka, Hera, the Fourth Sister, and my original concept Mandalorian, as well as some other fun things I've got coming up in 2025. So again, that is at j.snipscosplay.
All right. Upcoming on the show this Wednesday, we have World Between Worlds, where Jay rounds up what's the latest in Star Wars fashion and lifestyle products. And then on Friday, we'll be getting into episode 4 of Skeleton Crew. So thanks for listening to episode 821 of Podcast Stardust. Have a great week. And until next time, may the Force be